Namaste and a very good evening to all of you. I welcome you to my channel, The Outlier. My name is Mithun. In today's video, I'll be talking about how we can use the cross-tabulation option in SPSS to study the relationship between two nominal variables. I'll repeat, how can we study the relationship between two nominal variables using the cross-tab procedure in SPSS? Even before I proceed to demonstrate how to use the cross-tabulation procedure to study the relationship between two nominal variables in SPSS, may I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Let me give you a bit of a background about the data set that I'll be working on. There is a file in SPSS which is called as the customer satisfaction file. I'll be using this particular file to study the relationship between two variables. Now, in order to determine the customer satisfaction rate, a retail company conducted surveys of 582 customers at 4 store locations. I'll repeat, in order to determine the customer satisfaction rates, a retail company conducted surveys of 582 customers at 4 store locations. What is the goal of this video? The goal of this video is to study if there is a relationship between the quality of customer service and store. I repeat, the goal is to study whether there is a statistically significant relationship between the quality of customer service and store. To perform this particular analysis, I will be using the satisfaction dataset, which is part of the sample files folder, which is given by SPSS. I can go to the file menu, move to an option which is called as recently used data. SPSS displays 10 recently used data. I'll choose the very first option, which is called as satisfaction. As you can see here, in this particular data set, I have removed all the unwanted variables and retained only the important variables which are essential for our analysis. There are 3 important variables. The first variable is the store ID. The second variable is the customer service, customer satisfaction level. The last variable is contact with the staff representative. What is the sample size in this particular data set? When you look at the sample size, it is 582. So we have taken data of 582 customers. If you look at the first record, the first customer has visited store number 2. And when it comes to the rating for customer service satisfaction, he has rated somewhat negative. This variable indicates the service satisfaction level, and the first customer has said he is somewhat negative. And when it comes to the third variable contact, it says yes, which means that the staff representative got in touch with the customer. Look at the second customer. He has given a rating of strong negative. He has visited store 4. The third customer has visited store number 3, and his rating is somewhat negative. What we would like to do is, we would like to find out the relationship between 2 categorical variables, namely store and service. We can't use correlation in this example. The reason as to why we can't use Pearson's correlation is because Pearson's correlation demands that the 2 variables be scale. We don't have scale variables. We have 2 categorical variables. When we have categorical variables and you want to find the relationship between these 2 categorical variables, you have to use what is called as chi-square test. Even before proceeding to chi-square, let us perform a simple graph to study the relationship between store and service satisfaction. To check the relationship between these 2 variables, what I will do is I will click on the Analyze menu. In the Analyze menu, you have at least 25 different options. Let me click on the second option from the top, which is Descriptive Statistics. Under the Descriptive Statistics section, you have a small menu here. I'll be choosing the fourth option from the top. The fourth option from the top is called as Crosstabulation. I repeat, this is called as Crosstabulation procedure. This Crosstabulation procedure can be used to study the relationship whenever we have two categorical variables. Let me select this particular option. The moment I select this particular option, you can see here there's a new dialog box which is called as the Crosstabs dialog box. In the left-hand side, the three variables that are present in the data set are displayed. And on the right-hand side, you can see rows and columns. What I will do is I will choose the variable store under the row section. Secondly, I'll select the variable service satisfaction and push it under the columns. This will allow me to study the relationship between store and service satisfaction. At the left-hand side bottom corner, you have an option which is called Display Clustered Bar Chart. I repeat, Display Clustered Bar Chart. So let me go ahead and select Display Clustered Bar Chart. Further, at the right-hand side, you have different buttons. The third option from the top is the Cells button. You can click on this particular button. This opens up a new dialog box. This dialog box is called as the Crosstabulation Cell Display dialog box. Let me remove the option Observed Count and choose Row Percentages. It is a lot easier if you can have percentages rather than absolute numbers. So as you can see here, I've chosen the row percentages. Once you have made this selection, you can click on Continue and then hit the OK button. As you can see here, this is a blank sheet. This is the SPSS output window. The results of any analysis in SPSS will be displayed in the output window. You have two tables. The first table you can ignore. Let me scroll down. You can see here, this is the output of the cross-tabulation. Even before explaining this particular table, let us spend some time looking at the graph below. Graphs are always easier to understand. What do we have in the graphs? In the graphs, you can see here, the x-axis has information for the 4 stores. Store number 1, store number 2, store number 3, and store number 4. And the y-axis, we have the number of people who have expressed different levels of service satisfaction. You can see here, there are 5 different bars which are colored in 5 different shades. When you look at the legend, the blue color is used to indicate strong negative response. The red color is used to indicate somewhat negative response. Also, the green color here represents neutral reaction. Let's look at store 1. What we observe here is that the longest bar out of the 5 bars that we have, the longest bar here is the green color bar. The green color bar under the legend section says neutral. So most of the customers in store 1 have expressed neutral rating. Let me now look at store number 2. When you look at store number 2, here again, the longest bar is the green color bar, indicating that most of the people in store 2 have given a neutral rating. The same trend continues for store number 3, as well as store number 4, because in each of these stores, the longest bar is a neutral rating, which means one of the conclusions that we can draw, which is the first impression from the graph, is that majority of the people in each of the stores have given a neutral rating. One interesting observation is when you look at store number 2, the second longest bar is the red color bar. You can see here the red color bar is somewhat negative, which simply means that the second highest category after neutral rating is somewhat negative. This is a source of worry because most of the people, in fact, a lot of people, have given a somewhat negative rating for store 2. The same trend can be observed for store number 4 as well. The second longest bar in store number 4 is a red color bar, and red color bar indicates somewhat negative rating. Since in each of these 2 stores, you have quite a bit of negative rating that has been given by the customers, we can use this as an insight to give training to the executives in each of these stores so that they can improve the customer service satisfaction. But we would like to look at statistical evidence for us to believe whether these ratings are by chance or is there a scientific reason behind it. Let me now proceed to show you the table. Along the row, you can see the distribution of the stores. You have store 1, store 2, store 3, and store 4. And along the column, you have the 5 levels of service satisfaction: strong, negative. Second category is somewhat negative. Then you have neutral, somewhat positive, and strongly positive. We are not interested in neutral rating and the positive categories because it's a good sign. Since we are looking to improve, we'll mostly be looking at strongly negative rating and somewhat negative rating. In these 2 columns, the largest number is 22.1%. This is an important number, and this number belongs to the column somewhat negative. How do we interpret this number? Out of the total number of customers who have visited store number 2, 22% of the customers have given a somewhat negative rating in store 2. I repeat, out of the total number of customers who have visited store 2, 22% of the customers have given a somewhat negative rating for store 2. Look at the number beside it. It's approximately 20%. Here, it is strongly negative. When you add up these 2 numbers, that is 20% and 22%, it is roughly 42%, which goes to show that out of 100% of the customers who have visited store 2, 42% of them have given negative rating in store 2, which is a source of concern. Because there is such a high level of negative rating given by customers, we would definitely like to flag this. And as I said earlier, we would like to give some kind of training to the employees who work in store 2 so that they can bring up the quality of service and achieve higher levels of positive rating as opposed to negative rating. Let me also draw your attention to the number 21.6. Now, this is for store number 4, somewhat negative. So out of the total number of customers who visited store 4, 21.6% of customers have given a somewhat negative rating for store 4. This is again a source of concern. So store 2 and store 4 are attracting a lot of dissatisfied customers. Now, this is a source of worry, and we would like to highlight this to the top management that unless we improve the quality of service rendered in store 2 and store 4, it will be very, very difficult to maintain a healthy customer inflow. But one question here is, we can't make any conclusion just by looking at the cross-tabulation. What is very, very important for us to look at is the chi-square value, because chi-square indicates whether the relationship has scientific basis or is it happening by chance. To study the chi-square association, what I will do is I'll go back to the Analyze menu, choose the second button from the top, which is Descriptive Statistics. Under the Descriptive Statistics, I will click the fourth option from the top, which is called as Crosstabulation. Here, you can see the earlier variables that we had specified, namely store and service satisfaction, are present. I will not disturb these two variables. The additional level of information that I would need in the output window is the chi-square test of association value. How do we generate this? You can click on the second button from the right-hand side, which is called as the Statistics button. This will produce a dialog box, which is called as the Statistics dialog box. In the left-hand side, the very first option is chi-square test. Let me select the chi-square button, choose continue, and then hit the OK button. Now this will run the cross-tabulation procedure for the second time. You can see here, this is the new output that we have. This table gives you the cross-tabulation output. Let me scroll down. You can see here the chi-square test results are displayed. In the left-hand side, that is the first column, what you are able to see is the Pearson's chi-square value. You also have likelihood ratio value, linear by linear association value. I will mainly be focusing on the Carl Pearson's chi-square value. What is the Carl Pearson's chi-square value for this table? It is 16.29. I repeat, it is 16.29. The degrees of freedom in this case is 12. And finally, when you look at the asymptotic significance value, it is 0.17. This is in fact also called as the p-value or the probability value. Question is, how do we interpret the probability value? There's a very simple thumb rule, which is to compare the p-value with 0.05. I repeat, compare the p-value with 0.05. If the p-value is less than 0.05, you can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there is a relationship between the two variables. On the other hand, if the p-value is bigger than 0.05, we can go ahead and conclude that there is no relationship between the two variables. As a side note, just to remember the interpretation of p-value, particularly if you're a non-statistician, you can always use two lines. And these two lines are, if p is low, null will go. On the other hand, if p is high, null will fly. As you can see here, the Carl Pearson's value, the p-value in this case is 0.17. Clearly, it is bigger than 0.05, and therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. I repeat, because the p-value is bigger than 0.05, therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis and conclude that there is no relationship between the quality of customer service and the store. I repeat, there is no relationship between the quality of customer service and store. this is the end of our analysis. However, if you are interested in digging further, I would like to show you some additional analysis. Let me take you back to the data set that I've been working on. You can see here, this is the data set that I was working on. We tried to study the relationship between store and quality of customer service, and we found that there is no relationship. One very, very important piece of information which we have ignored here is the variable contact. When I hover the mouse on top of the third variable, that is contact, it says contact with the customer service representative. The question that we would like to ask here is, did the customers have any contact with the customer service representative? I repeat, did the customers have any contact with the customer service representative? If yes, what kind of an impact is that having on the relationship between store and service? The second possibility is, let's say the customers did not have any contact with the service representative. Does that have any bearing on the relationship between store and service? To study the relationship between store and service, controlling for the third variable, namely contact, what we are going to now do is we are going to cross-classify the customers based on whether they had contact with the service representative or not. To perform this analysis, I'm going to click on the Analyze menu. The second option from the top is Descriptive Statistics. Here, the fourth option from the top is what is called as Crosstabulation. Let me go ahead and click on Crosstabulation. This will produce a new dialog box, which is called as the Crosstabulation dialog box. I'm not going to disturb the row and the column variable here. What I'm going to do is select the variable contact with the customer service representative and push it into the layer box. You can see here, contact with the customer service has been pushed under the layer box. What this does is it provides us, it will generate two separate cross-tabulation to study the relationship between store and service satisfaction. The first table is for those customers who did not have a relationship, and the second cross-tabulation will be for those customers who did have a relationship with the customer service representative. With this, let me go ahead and click on the OK button. This is the output window. In the output window, you can see here, we have a big table. The first portion of the table is no, which means that there are one set of customers who did not have any contact with the customer service representative. The second portion of the table is for those customers who had a contact with the customer service representative. The third part of the table is for the entire data set. Instead of looking at the cross-tabulation, let me straight away scroll below and show you the value of the chi-square test. You can see here, this again has two parts. The first part is no, contact with the customer service representative. You can see here the Pearson's chi-square value is 20.8, degrees of freedom is 12, and the asymptotic significance level is 0.05. It is slightly greater than 0.05, which is the conventional thumb rule. Now, what does this first chi-square table tell us? For those customers who did not have any contact with the customer service representative, we have observed a p-value which is bigger than 0.05, and hence we conclude that there is no relationship between the quality of customer service and store. However, Please look at the second portion of the table wherein it says yes. Yes means that there were customers who had contact with the customer service representative. Here you can look at the Pearson's chi-square value, which is 25.7. The degrees of freedom is 12. And very, very interestingly, when you observe the p-value, it is 0.01. How do you interpret the 0.01 value? You need to compare it with 0.05. Clearly, 0.01 is less than 0.05, and hence we reject the null hypothesis and conclude that for those customers who were in touch with the customer service representative, for those customers who had contact with the customer service representative, there is statistically a significant relationship between quality of customer service and store. So this is a very, very interesting finding that we observe. Compare the earlier number that you had got under the significance level, which was greater. Now we are getting a number which is smaller than 0.05. So we have two separate conclusions. One for those people who were not in contact with the customer service representative, clearly there is no relationship. And for the second group where there was a relationship with the customer service representative, we have observed statistical evidence and we can go ahead and claim that there is a relationship between quality of customer service and store when the customers were in contact with the customer service representative. Further, there are two bar charts that are being produced. I'd like to draw your attention to the second bar chart. You can see here the title of the bar chart, contact with the customer service representative, yes. Let's examine the distribution of the service satisfaction rating for each of the four stores. For store 1, the longest bar is the green bar, which means neutral. So the majority category of customers have given a neutral rating. Let's examine store 3. Here again, the longest bar is the green color bar, indicating that majority of the customers have given a neutral rating for store 3. And finally, when you look at store number 4, again, the longest bar is the green bar, which indicates that majority of the customers who have given a rating for store 4 have given a neutral rating. What is really, really interesting is store number 2. Here, out of the 5 bars, the longest bar is the blue color bar. And when you look at the legend here, the blue color bar says strongly negative. I repeat, it says strongly negative. So majority of the customers who have visited store number 2 have given a strongly negative rating for store 2, which is definitely a source of concern. And therefore, we would like to highlight this as an insight, as a valuable insight, and flag this to the top management. One of the recommendations that we can make is to give better training to the employees who are working in store 2 so that they can increase the level of customer satisfaction. Remember, a happy customer comes back, an unhappy customer would leave the system. So this is what cross classification can do. I'm interested in doing some additional analysis, and therefore, let me go back to my source data. As you can see here, there are 2 categories. I would like to drop the customers who did not have any contact with the customer service representative. I would mainly focus on only those customers who had some kind of a contact with the customer service representative. Let me now click on the value labels option. When you click on the value labels option, you can see here 1 represents the yes category. I repeat, 1 represents the yes category and 0 represents the no category. So those customers who did not have any contact with the customer service representative, at this stage, I would like to drop them from further analysis. I would like to only retain those customers who had a relationship with the customer service representative. To filter out the zeros and keep only the ones, what we can do is we can use the select case option in SPSS. I'll go to the data menu. The last but one option here is select cases. Let me click on this particular button. This will open up a new dialog box. Here, I will choose the second option, which is if condition is satisfied. This simply means that if a row satisfies the criteria that we are specifying, such a row will be selected. If it does not, then such a row will be filtered out. There is a button here which is called as the if button. Let me go ahead and click on the if button. I can specify a simple filter condition by saying contact with customers must be equal to 1, which means those customers who had a contact with the customer service executive will be selected. Let me choose continue. And here, the third option which says delete unselected cases is what I'm selecting. I'm selecting the option delete unselected cases, which will make sure that all the zeros will be eliminated from the analysis. Once we have done this, we can go ahead and hit the OK button. Looks like the analysis has been performed. Let me go back and examine my data set. You can see here in the contact variable, we have only the yes category. The no category has been dropped. So this is what we have as far as the new data is concerned. Now, there's a very important concept that I'd like to explain at this stage. Many times when we are performing the Pearson's correlation, we talk about strength and direction of the relationship. I repeat, when we have two scale variables, it's very easy to find out the strength and direction. We can use the Carl Pearson's correlation coefficient. But here, the variables that we are talking about are categorical in nature. And when we have categorical variables, it becomes very difficult to talk about strength and direction of relationship, because the chi-square value is very silent when it comes to providing the strength and direction. If for some purpose, if the research that you are involved in necessitates that you specify the strength of relationship between store and quality of customer service and the direction of relationship, how do we do it? Let us say you want to find out how strong is the relationship between these two variables, or how weak is the relationship between store and service. This is where we have two important concepts. The first concept is what is called as symmetric measure. Symmetric measures are used to check the strength of relationship between the variables. I repeat, symmetric measures are used to check the strength of relationship between the variables. How do we obtain the symmetric measures for these two variables? To obtain the symmetric measures for these two variables, let me go to Analyze. Second option is Descriptive Statistics. Here I will choose Crosstabulation. I'm not going to make any changes as far as the variables are concerned. Now I can click on the Statistics button. The moment I click on the statistics button, you can see here, there's a new dialog box which opens up. You have the chi-square statistic. Below this, you have the nominal measures. There are 4 items here: contingency coefficient, P and Cramer's V, lambda, and uncertainty coefficient. You can use any of these measures to verify the strength of relationship between the variables store and quality of customer service. The most preferred option here would be the Cramer's V option. So I will click the Cramer's V option, select continue, and then hit the OK button. I will not be explaining the rest of the tables because I've already done this. Let me draw your attention to symmetric measures here. You can see here, this is the table which will give us the symmetric measures for customers who had contact with the customer service representative. Let me draw your attention to the Cramer's V statistic. The Cramer's V statistic here is 0.171. Question is, how do we interpret this particular number? Cramer's V is a number which lies between 0 and 1. If this value is less than 0.3, it means that there is a weak relationship between the variables. I repeat, if the Cramer's V is less than 0.3, it means that there is a weak relationship between the two variables. On the other hand, if the Cramer's V is greater than 0.7, it indicates that there is a strong relationship between the two variables. Clearly, you can see the Cramer's V value that we are getting is 0.17, which is less than 0.3, and hence we can conclude that there is a weak relationship between store and quality of customer service. If you want additional description for Cramer's V, you can double-click on this particular table. Once you double-click, the table will be activated. Select the Cramer's V statistic. Simply right-click and choose the very first button. I'm going to do this again for the benefit of audience. I'm going to select the Cramer's V statistic, right-click, and choose what is this. You can see here, SPSS helps us understand Cramer's V better. It says that a measure of association based on chi-square. So Cramer's V is nothing but a measure of association which is based on chi-square. The value ranges between 0 and 1. So the Cramer's V value has a range, the upper bound being 1 and the lower bound being 0. If the Cramer's V value is 0, it indicates that there is no relationship between the row and column variables. On the other hand, if the value is close to 0, it indicates a high degree of relationship between the variables. A measure of association which is based on chi-square, Cramer's V can attain a value of 1 for tables of any dimension. So this is a clear explanation that SPSS gives. So we have learned how to check the the strength of the relationship between two categorical variables using Cramer's V. The next important aspect which I'd like to talk about is the direction of relationship. So we would need a directional measure as well. To obtain the directional relationship, when I say direction, as one variable increases, does the other also increase? Or is there an inverse relationship, like as if one variable increases, the other decreases? We do not know. We have to verify it. To verify it, you have a set of directional measures. To obtain the directional measures, let me click on the dialog box and select the very first item from the top, cross-tabulation. Once you choose cross-tabulation, at the right-hand side, we can click on statistics. Here, you can see quite a few directional measures. The first measure is gamma. You then have Somers D. Further, you also have Kendall's tau B and Kendall's tau C. By and large, they all perform a similar job, but for the purpose of simplicity, I will just explain Kendall's tau B. We looked at Cramer's V to study the strength of relationship, which means, is the relationship strong or is the relationship weak? Cramer's V will answer that question. The next question that we have is the direction, which means as one variable increases, does the other also increase? Or as one variable increases, does the other decrease? To answer this question, we will be taking the help of Kendall's tau B. Let me click on continue. Once I click on the option continue, the next thing that I can do is hit the OK button. Now, this is the output window. In the output window, you have the output for cross-tabulation. When I scroll below, you can see chi-square tests. Further, you have the symmetric measures. Under the symmetric measures, we already have seen the phi measure, the Cramer's V. I will not interpret this again, but I'd like to draw your attention to the Kendall's tau B. I repeat, the Kendall's tau B. How do we interpret this measure? The Kendall's tau B is a value which lies between -1 and +1. If the value is greater than 0.7, you can say that there is a positive relationship between the two variables, which means as one variable increases, the other also increases. On the other hand, if the value is less than -0.7, it indicates that there's a negative relationship, a strong negative relationship between the two variables. Let me double click on this particular measure, select Kendall's tau B, right click and say, what is this? SPSS gives a description of Kendall's tau B. It says that this is a non-parametric measure of association. Very, very important. Kendall's tau B is a non-parametric measure of association for ordinal or ranked variables that ties into account. The sign of the coefficient indicates the direction of relationship. So this is a very, very important point that we need to keep in mind when we interpret the Kendall's tau B. It is the sign, which means whether there is a positive sign or a negative sign. The coefficient value in our case is plus 0.06, which means that there's a positive relationship. Let me read this out again. The sign of the coefficient indicates the direction of relationship, and its absolute value indicates the strength. With larger absolute values indicate stronger relationship. The possible values range from -1 to +1. So here we are speaking about the range of the Kendall's tau B statistic, when he says the range is between -1 and +1, and with large values indicating stronger relationship. But a value of -1 or +1 can be obtained only from square tables. The value that we have obtained is 0.06, which clearly indicates that there is a weak positive relationship between store and quality of customer service. Further, you can look at the standard error value as well as the approximate t value. I'd like to draw your attention to the approximate significance level here. It is 0.199. I repeat, it is 0.199, which is clearly greater than 0.05. Since this number is greater than 0.05, we fail to reject our null hypothesis and conclude that the relationship is weak and it is statistically insignificant. So this is the conclusion that we can draw based on the customer service satisfaction rating. So if I were to summarize the discussion that we have had, in today's video, we've studied how to use the cross-tabulation procedure to study nominal by nominal relationship. We looked at the chi-square value. Further, we looked at the Cramer's V statistic as a symmetric measure. Additionally, we looked at the Kendall's tau b, which can be used as a directional measure to study the direction between the variables. With this, I have come to the end of today's video. In today's video, we've seen how to check the relationship between nominal variables using the cross-tabulation procedure. I thank you very much for watching this particular video. I request you to subscribe to my channel, also like and share my videos. Thank you very much once again. Have a great day ahead.